Everybody, welcome to this episode of Coffee with John. Looking forward to talking with both of you, Hamsa Yaqo and Paul Spiegelman, the founders of Kintsugi Village. Sorry. Okay, yeah, there we go. And I'm excited to talk to you about but talk to both of you. I want to just read what's on your website, because I think if somebody goes to your website, KintsugiVillage.org, I want to start here. In the heart of Detroit, something special is taking root. Kintsugi Village is a place dreamed up by people with big hearts, winding life stories and a shared hope for what's possible when community comes together. We're starting with the littlest among us, creating an early childhood education center where curiosity leads, stories are honored, and every child is seen and celebrated. Inspired by both traditional and imagination, our approach blends life skills, play, and learning in ways that help kids grow into themselves socially, emotionally, and academically. Beautifully written, beautiful what you both are doing and have built and have launched. Talk about just kind of where the idea came from. Let's start there, because it in my opinion, for what it's worth, the education system has got to change. They seem to be very laggard in the change of what education looks like today. This is airing April 2026. AI has taken a significant role of things. People have been writing about for years that colleges should be teaching adaptability, because they're teaching children things to a job market that they don't even know what the jobs are going to be. I remember reading an article 10 plus years ago that said by 2030, 85% of the S&P 500 don't exist yet by 20. This was 10 years ago, and they were saying in 2030. The world is changing, and it seems like, that your world, that your tradition and imagination. I listened to a podcast the other day, the CEO of Coinbase, and what they were saying is not that your children are this, but that this world is built for people with learning disabilities, ADHD, and dyslexia, because they've always had to think outside the box. They've always had to think differently. And this market is built for that. I'm dyslexic, and I can say it's true. I've always had to think a little bit differently than everybody. Okay. So I've been talking a lot to clients about my children who are in college. I've been talking about on the podcast with guests how the education system has to change. You are pioneers now in changing it, in making a footprint. How did you come up with the idea and launch it? And how did you have the courage to do so?
Well, thanks, John. Good to see you again.
Great to see you guys. I'm big fans of both of yours in general.
I don't know if we call ourselves pioneers yet, but we're really enjoying what we're doing. And just, how it all came about is Hamsa and I had really been working together for the last 10 years in this other organization that I started called the Small Giants Community, which is a business nonprofit focused on purpose, values, and culture, things that we were both very passionate about. And a couple of years ago, Hamsa and I got the itch to do something different, to take on a new challenge, to say maybe what we did in the business world we could bring to a local community here in Detroit and be a part of the transformation of the city. And so sitting together one day, thinking about where we could help, what we were passionate about, where those might intersect, Hamsa said, well, she wanted to do something with kids. And that led me to say, let's build a school. And then we decided to focus on early childhood because of the importance of those years in a child's development. And you talked a lot about education and what's broken and what needs to change. We came upon this wonderful curriculum called Reggio Emilia out of Italy. It's hundreds of years old, based on a town in Italy that focuses less on pure academics and more on life skills. So things like art and nature and food and community. We also happen to be passionate about those things. And that led to the vision of Kintsugi Village, was what if we created a campus where all of these initiatives and programs could operate both independently and together? so that we can not just educate the kids, but build a community center based on curiosity where people could learn, grow, and develop together. So we're really here as a gathering place for all ages. It's just that we started with the school, and we happened to find a beautiful spot, an old Catholic middle school in Corktown in Detroit, and 40,000 square foot building on a couple acres that we rehabbed starting in March of 2025. And we opened the school in October of 2025. And it's just been a joy to see these little kids running around, to teach them in ways that is not based on a formal curriculum, but in ways that's based on their interest, their curiosity, and teaching in a way that we think over time will have a big impact on them, not just the kids, but their families and the community overall.
Yeah. Hamsa, any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say, so there's a little bit of pre-literacy and pre-math that comes as part of the learning, but the focus is really, as Paul mentioned, on chasing their curiosity. So what happens is in this curriculum or this philosophy is that the first portion of when they started with us, it was like just how to be a good community member. So it was about how to just communicate and how to share and how to, tie your own shoes. And so it was all about like how to be in a classroom, how to be a community member, because we feel like if we give them that foundation, then they can ask questions and they can learn, they can be proactive, and they can be independent. And then from there, every month there's a theme that we introduce. And then, so we're supporting 3 to 5 year olds. The 3-year-olds are going to be curious and ask questions in a specific way versus the 4 and 5 year olds. And so we introduce a theme, and then the teachers just sort of follow the curiosities of the kids. So one theme was Earth, for example. The littles just got into like dirt and being outside and planting and seeds, where the older ones are getting into like water and creatures of the water. And so you just see, just as adults, what we say is like, if you go to a museum, somebody may be interested in contemporary art and you're going to just go all into that. But if you're not interested in like, Italian art, you may just skip that section altogether. And so it's the same with kids, but we just allow them the space to be creative and to be curious. And then we just sort of chase that learning. But there's still some structure, there's some guidelines, but a lot of it is all child-led.
I love everything you both just shared. So, but I want to talk to the listener who may be listening and thinking at this point, this sounds amazing, but how do they know, the 3 to 5 year olds, what they want to do is the right thing to do, right? So how do we follow them versus like, kind of like, guide them to kind of also what we know is best? Where's that intersection?
Yeah. I mean, there's a balance, right? So, so it's like when they're outside and they're learning about certain things, you still have an adult there who's guiding, who's protecting, who's caring, but they're experimenting. So it's a lot of experimentation. So there's still some guardrails. The teacher is still leading the way, a few teachers, but it's amazing what kids the abilities that they have and the curiosities that they have. So, one example, we have an artist who's a teacher who took them through a process for 6 weeks to create a couple of pieces. And then that resulted, because we have an art gallery on the second floor of Kintsugi Village, we have, so it resulted in an art show. We called it MoCA, so Museum of Kintsugi Kids Art.
Yeah.
That work is still displayed. It'll be displayed for another month. But if you come and see the pieces these kids created, we literally have folks who are really interested in the arts. They collect art, and they walk the space and just couldn't believe that 3 to 5 year olds made this art. And the reason is because they had some guidance. They were given some prompts, but it's amazing what kids at that age can actually create. Yeah. And what happens is we just as adults, like just shelter them too much as they grow. And then we just kind of, block this creativity, but it's all in there. So they created pieces that they made abstract pieces that are unbelievable that you'd never think a child made, but they were just given the space and the freedom to do that.
So Hamsa and Paul, this, as you guys are talking, this feels like a throwback to the 70s and 80s of what life just was. I'm going to be 54, May 15th. And so, but I feel like this is the energy, what I'm picking up from you guys is this is the energy of like how I grew up. You know, you left your house, your parents didn't know where you were. They weren't really helicoptering because they just weren't, and they didn't have the technology. And so this sounds amazing. So here's my question. The life skills you're teaching them from 3 to 5, how are you seeing, or how do you kind of talk to the parents to keep it going from 5 to 6 and 6 to 8 and 8 to 10? So they don't lose it. These life skills seem to be critical, and probably very, very important to learn by the age of 7, I would think. I mean, I just, some studies I've read, I failed every pre-med class I ever took, but some studies that I've read. So how do they keep the life skills going? And do you do anything for the parents to also kind of educate them to keep it in the home?
Yeah, a lot of the curriculum or the basis of this philosophy is including the families, including the parents. So we bring them in for workshops. We involve them in the teaching. We hear that the things that the kids are learning, they bring back to the home, and they're helping in terms of how kids are being parents are saying, like, I don't know what you're doing with my child, but they are acting completely differently now at home, having been with you for 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever. I think the great question, John, is that how are we going to extend this beyond the time that they're working with us? And how are we going to measure the impact of that? So as an example, we've been working with our school director in Hamsa to go to local elementary schools to meet with them to understand how they assess and measure entrance of people into kindergarten, for example, and what are they looking for? So how could we determine whether our kids that graduate from our school arrive better prepared and what skills that they need? And they've told us that the reading, the arithmetic, those basics, that's nice, but we'd much rather have you focus on these life skills, on the emotional intelligence, on kindness and gratitude, and the ability to have conversation. So I'm older than you, so yeah, the throwback is like, I just went out in the backyard, right?
Correct, right. And it was fun.
You know, There was no guidance. There was, but that's where we learned. That's where we played. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't, and they don't need it. And so what we give them this environment, we expose them to things on this campus that it'd be very difficult to do in another way. So we're not just focused on the school as being special, but it's special in part because we have a whole floor dedicated to the arts and a beautiful gallery that their stuff is exhibited in, or they go and do workshops in. We have a big culinary kitchen, so they come up and they help cook. They will help, make pizzas or make cookies. We have a garden with 26 beds. They go out and tend to the garden. So they're hands-on with everything. And all of those extend to the families. And again, we're 6 months in. So, but we just finished a strategic plan where we sat down to say, what are those things we can assess when they enter our program? What can we assess when they leave? And then how can we measure them in the years following to hopefully create a really special impact on these folks? And some of it is as simple as saying that by creating this village and this community gathering center, that we have a center of kindness in an unkind world, right? There's just a lot going on right now. And when people are able to just be themselves and be creative and grow and learn together at all ages, we think that's a contribution that'll be valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing respite. I need to set some time and come see it. I want to talk to you guys. So a couple things. If I'm listening right now to this and I am a middle school professor, middle school parent, high school, college, grad school, med school, law school, etc., I'm thinking we should bring the students here, because there's a lot here for all ages to learn. Because I think a lot of what you're talking about, a lot of times when I'm talking AI, I'll say, hey, these things have changed, but what hasn't changed? And I think one of the things in business and in life that hasn't changed I'm just going to pull from what you said, Paul, this center of kindness, finding our way back to center and that center of kindness. It felt like when I grew up, everybody was kind of could disagree, but there was a balance of kindness. You could have, both sides of the aisle have a discussion, but it left in kindness. And so how do you take these lessons, right? Is there a bigger picture to infuse it into other educational platforms, higher education, into courses for people? Because it seems like people need this more than ever.
I mean, I don't know about kind of, infusing it through courses or whatever. I think what we're trying to do in our little part is, first, it's part of our values. So like to be kind with each other, with whoever we're serving, that's just part of our core values. So we talk about that. We share that with the team. And I think because we're very outward about it, it's naturally attracting folks who have the same values. And the teachers, so if we're starting at the school, the teachers are talking about that every day to the kids. Like you'll hear them, if you're in the hallways here, you'll hear we don't do that to our friends. We have to say we're sorry. They're just constantly talking about being kind to each other, and supporting each other and being there for each other. That's starting with the littles. Yeah. And then I think, the other part is, and I think we're living it every day, but sometimes we're even well, what else are we doing that's where that's so clear and it's a through line at Kintsugi Village. So when we're renting our spaces or we're hosting groups and whatnot, the first thing we hear when they leave here and we say, well, how was your experience here? They just say, your staff is so kind. Yeah. It's like people are so kind in the village. That's what they're experiencing. And I think because we talk about it, we're open about it, we're teaching it from the littles. And I think that's just how we behave on a daily basis, that we're just naturally attracting folks. Yeah. And so hopefully they're going out into the world and carrying that with them. I don't know, but beyond that.
Yeah. And I think, I think we're trying to display the fact that there isn't an aisle, right? You're not going to teach an aisle to 3 to 5 year olds. But what we're encouraging people that come in is to leave the aisle outside and just come in and be together. Yeah. When people, we have rental spaces. So you could bring in a leadership team and say, I want to do a day-long leadership retreat with my team. And you could rent a room here at Kintsugi Village. But we don't want you to just rent a room. We want you to spend the day. We want your group to do an art class. We want your group to do a cooking class. We want your group to go volunteer in the garden during the day or go down and read to the kids. So if you could just picture a place that is where kindness exists, where respect exists, and you're open to being genuine, and you're open to just meeting new people and creating for a moment and gathering and spending time together, just regardless of what else is going on in the world. And that just doesn't seem to exist today. That's how we want to contribute. And the name Kintsugi, I don't know if you know what its definition is, John, but it's the old Japanese art of taking broken pottery, repairing it with gold in the cracks. The idea was that the resulting piece is more beautiful than before it was broken.
Oh, I love that.
Named the village Kintsugi Village because of personal journeys that we had, that became important to us. It's a metaphor for life. And so whether it's how we rehab this building or how we're going to touch the people that interact with the village, everybody has a Kintsugi story. Yeah. Right. In our case, we don't mind talking about it and being transparent and genuine. And that's what we're trying to do, is to create a safe place, an oasis in this, rough world where people can just be themselves. Yeah. And that's what we're hoping to do for all ages.
I think that the other piece I want to just add, so in creating Kintsugi Village, we met with the neighbors in the community, and they were involved very early on in what this is going to be and what's coming, and just making sure, because we are nestled in a neighborhood in Corktown, and this was a school. This was a Catholic middle school for over 40 years, and many people in the community have ties to it. They went to school here, they worked here, etc. So the other piece is, you see stuff happening, development, and oftentimes there's reactions to what's happening. And that's because the people who are in the community don't always feel involved, right? Or they're heard. And that was very important to us. So they were involved very early on. So even as we're developing and we're activating spaces and we're welcoming families and kids, they've all been part of this journey. So when we planted, before we even opened the building, many people in the neighborhood, over 100 people showed up to plant some things, you know, a pocket forest at Kintsugi, but they've all been involved in the process. So even if something doesn't go exactly the way we wanted, or even if something is not exactly how they, you know, were hoping for, but because they're involved and there's open communication, they're a partner in the process, it just feels very like sort of kind and very community based. And so, you know, intentional and just, you know, involving the community. So that's been another part of bringing this to life.
This is so, what you both have built and continue to build is so beautiful. I think one of the most important life skills that people can, I see this with clients, I see this for myself. One of the most important life skills is recalibrating, getting back to center. You know, two people experience stress, but whoever can get back to center faster and recalibrate usually ends up getting, you know, to that next step a little bit faster. And so it seems like you're doing that as part of the through line of what you've built and what you're doing and what you're teaching these kids, a tool, I mean, many tools, but this one specifically that will serve them for the rest of their lives. Can you just maybe talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, there's actually something that happens in we have a couple of classrooms activated now, and we have the Calm Corner, and it's literally about recalibration for kids.
Oh.
So they're taught from the first day they come in, you're going to do stuff with kids. We're going to have a reading circle. Like there's all these things that happen. But if you need a moment because you're not feeling like yourself, you can go to the Calm Corner and you can just take some breaths. And they're learning that at age 3. And it's all about recalibration. They can take as long as they need to. They can be on their own. A teacher can sit with them. They can ask a friend to come and sit with them. And it's just so they can recenter. And then they're just like, because a lot of times what we're doing as adults, we're like reacting to kids' behaviors. Right. And we're thinking, oh, you know, they're off and, you know, and they're bad and all this stuff. But this just allows them to just be with themselves. And it's just amazing what happens to them when you give them that space. Yeah. So we literally have a Calm Corner. And I feel like as adults, we need calm corners to
we do.
Yeah. I think the other part of it that is important to us is all about just building relationships. Yeah. And the way you build relationships is through curiosity and vulnerability. And so when one of us needs to go back to center, we rely on each other for that. And so that doesn't come without being genuine and being open. And, you know, in many ways, we've closed ourselves off to genuine conversation because of fear or insecurity. And the more that we're open, and then we find that there's other people in the same situation or have been through it that we can rely on and trust. And so to the extent that we're helping people foster those relationships here, whether they're 3 to 5 or they're 80 years old, then I think that's a contribution that we can make. And again, it goes back to this, how things used to be.
Yeah. And how things used to be when it came to community was so different. And how special that you took over a place that was special in the community. You included the community. I meditate, and one of the things I do is transcendental meditation. And I took a TM class from an instructor in Clawson, Michigan. And I don't have any data on this, but and I may be getting some of this lost in translation, but I don't think so. They credit the TM office there for helping the rebirth of Clawson. That the energy from people learning and meditating and raising the frequency and raising the vibration helped the entire city. It seems like you're doing that. And I know, Hamsa, you've said like, well, we're doing our small little piece, but it seems like your small piece is having a big ripple effect and impact on the community. Can you talk about how just it has continually kind of like expanded that circle as you build kind of those relationships that Paul's talking about?
Yeah, I think, well, one example I want to give is somebody who walked outside. So in our garden, we have these pathways that if you walk 11 times around, it's a mile, but we have our beautiful community garden, public benches, and this pocket forest that was donated to us of 1,100 plants that will grow 15 to 20 feet high.
Wow.
And he was walking the pathways, and he said every time he walked through the pocket forest, he felt like this vibration. He felt like the air was different,
Yeah.
and the impact that had on him. And, it may be difficult for some, including me, to connect with that. Like, really, you really felt that. But that's what Hamsa was talking about earlier, as people just come through our building for tours, which happen every day, because you don't really understand what it is unless you're here. And you walk through and they just say there's a feeling, there's a vibe, etc. And so I think that as we grow our brand, as we grow the reputation, then it does expand. And the fact is we haven't seen any model like this out there before. And we're not going to go and build 100 Kintsugi villages, but maybe if we're successful in measuring this impact and having, whether it's anecdotal or real data to support it, this can be a model for other communities. We can create a recipe that can be duplicated to bring this kind of learning and creativity and growth to life in a lot of other places.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe even a franchise model. Yeah.
Maybe, but we're all not. I don't think we mentioned we're 100%
Right.
not for profit. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to give back to the community in a way that can sustain itself over time.
It's amazing. Hamsa, any thoughts?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else around that. I think, I was just thinking about like the kids were outside earlier and just the sounds of the kids. And, those are they're little things that are happening in the community, or like as we were developing, this building or rehabbing it, kind of the businesses we're watching as it was sort of coming to life. And so really what the best we can do right now is invite people in to continue to partake in what we're doing. And then we continue to listen. So what's really important to us is that this is all new. We've never done it before. We've never rehabbed a building of this size or built a school or art program or any of those pieces. And we've certainly never done it in the combination that it's sort of, coming together as. So the best we can do is continue to involve the community, continue to listen, make adjustments. So like that was really wonderful how many families took a chance on us. We call them the founding families. And when we opened the school, and that, they're giving up their most important, their kids and being part of this process. But we said, we'll listen, we'll adjust. And that's the best we can do. And I think they're, again, part of the process. They're part of the journey. And we'll just continue to build on that.
How did you get your first students? Like you said, this is new. So, most people have a certain way of thinking about school and, yada, yada, yada. So how did you get your first?
Yeah. So the way we involved the families was to have the community meetings. So there were two types of meetings that we held, again, from the beginning. It was A, we held our own, and then B, we joined neighborhood block groups. So in Corktown, in and around this area, there's many different block groups. And they're all very active, and they're all neighbors that come together and learn about what's happening in their neighborhood. So every 4 to 6 weeks would either have our own or we join the neighborhood block groups. And we were like, there's a school coming, there's this rest of the building that's coming, but we focused a lot on the school because that was the first thing we were opening. And we said, here's what we're going to do. Here's the philosophy. Here's what we're hoping to accomplish. Will you sort of join in? And when we first opened in October with our first class, we had 20 families join in. And then by January, we doubled that size, and then we're continuing to add. And so they were really it was just word of mouth, working with the community and the neighbors. And then they've been part of the process throughout. So sharing with them on a weekly basis, hearing their feedback, all of that.
And part of it was intentional to go slow because as we all know, and we've been in business for many, many years, starting a new organization is hard. And we've made plenty of mistakes along the way. And like Hamsa said, we're not experts in any of these areas. There's such talent in Detroit, passion, subject matter experts. So we're building a team of these subject matter experts. But even in hiring, sometimes we make mistakes there. And when we launched the school, we said, we want to do this slowly just by word of mouth. And then we went back, a month or 6 weeks in and said to the parents, how's it going? And they right away said, like, kindness, your teachers, what they, or if you could make these adjustments. So you just got to listen. Got to listen to the community, got to listen to your constituents. You got to make mistakes, learn from them, and keep going. But we've done it slowly because, again, we're in this for the long term, and we don't advertise or anything like that. The best testimony we can get is from somebody that's a part of the village already.
What's one thing that's great? What's one thing you've each learned about yourself going through this process?
Well, for me, I can say that, at this point in my life, I have looked back and said, what was I thinking, when I got into something that's this massive of a project?
Yeah.
Right. But what it's taught me about myself, because I went through a pretty rough time a few years ago, that I'm driven by purpose. And this gave me renewed purpose and energy in life that I really hadn't had for a long time. And I think that this work that we're doing at Kintsugi Village is going to be the most impactful work I've done in my career.
It's amazing. Hamsa, how about you?
Yeah. I mean, I've known that I'm resourceful because I've typically been resourceful in different positions, but this is a whole another level of resourceful.
Yeah.
Like I'm a plumber one day, then I'm an IT person the next day, then I'm supporting in the classroom another day. So, that's a startup world. People know what it takes to start a startup, but this is multi-level and, multidisciplinary. And so there's so much going on, and it's really allowed me to really expand myself. And I've needed that too. The work that I've done the last 10 years with Small Giants was incredible, but I also reached a point where I thought, okay, I've done everything that I can. I really got to turn it over to new energy and new leadership. So this is really growing my mind in a variety of ways. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Quick speed round. One class you would teach in college or you think should be taught in college today?
I would say something around resourcefulness and just thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
I would say curiosity.
Yeah. 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 And I'll add to that, the importance of quiet time, right? The importance of a calm corner. A college class should be, you go, you sit, and you do nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good.
You just sit and think. When I was in middle school, as you guys are talking, there was a middle school teacher. Her name was Mrs. Levine, and she was great, but she was a little kooky, but really wasn't kooky. She just was known as this kooky. And we had this one class, and it was called I can't remember what it was called. I think it was called creative, something. But all we did the entire class was listen to classical music, trace quarters, and color in the quarters. That's it.
Wow.
And when I think about, and it was a really I didn't know how relaxing it was at the time, but it was a really relaxing class. If you could have coffee with anyone, living or dead, who would it be, and what would you want to talk about?
What came to mind for me was my dad. And I've had coffee with him a lot. He just drinks decaf, but he's going to be 99 years old, and he lives in Los Angeles, and he's still my hero. And so if I had time to do that with anybody, it would just be to do it with him and listen to his stories about life.
It's great. So how about you?
Yeah, that inspired me to say my paternal grandfather, because I was 2 when he passed away. He was born in 1892, but he was the original villager. So he lived in a village, and it was the type of village that I went to every summer. A couple thousand people, everybody knew everyone, everybody loved and supported each other.
Amazing.
You can run down the street and you'd walk into somebody's home and they'd make you a meal. And I've always loved this village concept, and we're hoping to create our own village here, but I would want to just sit with him and learn about him, because there's stories about him and how kind he was and everything he'd do for everyone in the village. And so he'd be a good chat.
Yeah, that's those are good ones. Book that made a big impact for both of you.
Mine was Eat, Pray, Love.
Okay. Good. Paul?
With Gilbert.
Has to be Small Giants because
Yeah.
reading that book allowed me to continue my passion for culture and engagement, and see if I had a voice beyond the work that I had done in my own company to help other leaders learn to lead this way. So that's probably had the biggest impact on me.
Great. All right. Last question. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do to tap into their courage when they have an idea to do something big and bold, but maybe scared to take that first step, they should.
The thing that comes to me is just start.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask questions.
Yeah. That's good. Tell everybody who your ideal students are or families, where they can connect with you and learn more about the village.
Yeah, the best way to learn about the village is go to our website, kintsugivillage.org. For the littles, 3 to 5-year-olds, the families that we support are anywhere, but we prioritize families in the neighborhood in Corktown because that's who we're here to serve. So they get a discount actually on tuition. But the village is open to families, to all ages, to support their creativity, and volunteers. We have a big volunteer program as well. So we'd love to hear from people who can go to the website, initiate some level of interest, and we'd love to host tours. So the best way to experience is to come, if you're in the Detroit area, come down and visit with us, and we'll share a cup of coffee and see where your passion leads you.
It's great.
And then if you email hello@kintsugivillage.org, there's always a live person behind that. So say hello and we'll start a conversation.
It's nice to get a live person. Hamsa and Paul, I'm big fans of both of you from Small Giants. Paul, you've been very gracious and wrote an article about me many years ago, which I'm still grateful for. And you both made huge impacts at Small Giants for a lot of people and a lot of companies. And what you built here is really spectacular. And I read a book probably 20 some years ago called Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey Moore. And he talks about innovators and early adopters. And the innovators, it can be a lonely place when you have a big idea and you start something that's new and groundbreaking, but so well needed, especially in the world today. So I'm grateful that you both took the leap and had the courage to jump and do something big and bold that's going to make a big difference in a lot of people's lives. So thanks for being innovators. I called you pioneers, Paul. I know you said, you don't see yourself that way, but I see both of you that way. To the Think Big community, I'll extract one thing that I think is really, really important. And everything you shared today was great, from kindness and emotional intelligence and the teachings and the life skills. But I think if you're listening to this, one thing I think is a really great takeaway is, in light of everything that's going on in the world, find your calm corner. And, I think a lot of us wish our parents taught us how to recalibrate earlier instead of having to learn it on our own in our 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, et cetera. So thanks for what you do. And any closing thoughts?
No, thanks for spreading the word. Yeah, I appreciate all the years of following you too. So I appreciate you having us, John.
Yeah, thanks so much. Stay on for a second. Thanks, everybody.